Book 5, Canto 7, The Legend of Artegall. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Faerie Queene by Edmund Spenser, Book 5, The Legend of Artegall, Canto 7. Britomart comes to Isis church, where she strange visions sees. She fights with Radigund, her slays, and Artegall thence frees. Naught is on earth more sacred or divine, that gods and men do equally adore, than this same virtue, that doth right define. For the heavens themselves, whence mortal men implore right in their wrongs, are ruled by righteous lore of highest Jove, who doth true justice deal to his inferior gods, and evermore therewith contains his heavenly commonweal, the skill whereof to princes' hearts he doth reveal. Well therefore did the antique world invent, that justice was a God of sovereign grace, and altars unto him, and temples lent, and heavenly honours in the highest place, calling him great Osiris, of the race of the old Egyptian kings, that whilome were, with feigned colours shading a true case. For that Osiris, whilst he lived here, the justest man alive, and truest did appear. His wife was Isis, whom they likewise made a goddess of great power and sovereignty, and in her person cunningly did shade that part of justice, which is equity, whereof I have to treat here presently. Unto whose temple when as Britomart arrived, she with great humility did enter in, ne would that night depart, but Talus mote not be admitted to her part. There she received was in goodly wise of many priests, which duly did attend upon the rites and daily sacrifice, all clad in linen robes with silver hemmed, and on their heads with long locks comely kemmed. They wore rich mitres shaped like the moone, to shew that Isis doth the moone portend, like as Osiris signifies the sun, for that they both like race in equal justice run. The championess them greeting, as she could, was thence by them into the temple led, whose goodly building when she did behold, borne upon stately pillars, all dispread with shining gold, and arched overhead, she wondred at the workmans passing skill, whose like before she never saw nor read, and thereupon long while stood gazing still, but thought that she thereon could never gaze her fill. Thenceforth unto the idol they her brought, the which was framed all of silver fine, so well as could with cunning hand be wrought, and clothed all in garments made of line, hemmed all about with fringe of silver twine. Upon her head she wore a crown of gold, to shew that she had power in things divine. And at her feet a crocodile was rolled, that with her wreathed tail her middle did enfold. One foot was set upon the crocodile, and on the ground the other fast did stand, so meaning to supprefle both forged guile and open force. And in her other hand she stretched forth a long white slender wand. Such was the goddess, whom when Britomart had long beheld, herself upon the land she did prostrate, and with right humble heart unto herself her silent prayers did impart. To which the idol, as it were inclining, her wand did move with amiable looke, by outward shew her inward fence designing, who well perceiving, how her wand she fhooke, it as a token of good fortune tooke. By this the day with dampe was overcaft, and joyous light the houfe of Jove forsooke. Which when fhe faw, her helmet she unlaced, and by the altars fide herfelf to flumber placed. For other beds the priefts there ufed none, but on their mother earths deare lap did lie, and bake their fides upon the cold hard stone, t'inure themselves to fufferance thereby, and proud rebellious flefh to mortify. For by the vow of their religion they tied were to stedfast chastity and continence of life, that all forgone they mote the better tend to their devotion. Therefore they mote not taft of flefhly food, ne feed on ought, the which doth blood containe, ne drink of wine, for wine they say is blood, even the blood of Gyants, which were flaine by thundring Jove in the Phlegrean plaine, for which the earth, as they the ftory tell, wroth with the gods, which to perpetual paine had damned her fonnes, which gainft them did rebell, with inward griefe and malice did againft them fwell. And of their vitall blood, the which was shed in her pregnant bofome, forth fhe brought the fruitfull vine, whofe liquor bloody red, having the minds of men with fury fraught, mote in them ftirre up old rebellious thought, to make new warre againft the gods againe. Such is the powre of that fame fruit, that nought the fell contagion may thereof reftraine, ne within reafons rule her madding mood containe. There did the warlike mayd herfelfe repofe under the wings of Iftice all that night, and with fweet reft her heavy eyes did clofe, after that long dayes toile and weary plight. Where whileft her earthly parts with foft delight of fencelefle fleepe did deeply drowned lie, there did appeare unto her heavenly fpright a wondrous vision, which did clofe imply the courfe of all her fortune and posterity. Her feemed, as fhe was doing facrifice to Iffice, deckt with mitre on her head, and linnen ftole, after thofe prieftes guize. All fuddenly fhe faw transfigured her linnen ftole to robe of fcarlet red, and moone like mitre to a crowne of gold, that even fhe herfelfe much wondred at fuch a chaunge, and joyed to behold herfelfe adorned with gemmes and jewels manifold. And in the midft of her felicity, an hideous tempeft feemed from below to rife through all the temple fuddenly, that from the altar all about did blow the holy fire, and all the embers ftrow upon the ground, which kindled privily into outrageous flames unwares did grow, that all the temple put in jeopardy of flaming, and herfelfe in great perplexity. With that the crocodile, which fleeping lay under the idols feet in fearelefle bowre, feemed to awake in horrible difmay, as being troubled with that ftormy ftowre, and gaping greedy wide did ftreight devoure both flames and tempeft, with which growen great and fwollen with pride of his own peerelefle powre, he gan to threaten her likewife to eat, but that the goddefle with her rod him backe did beat. Though turning all his pride to humblefle meeke, himfelfe before her feet he lowly threw, and gan for grace and love of her to feeke, which fhe accepting, he fo neare her drew, that of his game fhe foone enwomed grew, and forth did bring a lion of great might, that shortly did all other beafts subdew. With that fhe waked, full of fearefull fright, and doubtfully difmayd through that fo uncouth fight. So thereupon long while fhe musing lay, with thoufand thoughts feeding her fantasy, until fhe spide the lampe of lightfome day, uplifted in the porch of heaven high. Then up fhe rofe, fraught with melancholy, and forth into the lower parts did pafle, whereas the prieftes fhe found full busily about their holy things for morrow mafle, whom fhe saluting faire resaluted was. But by the change of her unchearefull looke they might perceive fhe was not well in plight, or that fome penfivenefle to heart fhe tooke, Therefore thus one of them, who feemed in fight To be the greateft and the graveft wight, To her befpake: Sir Knight, it feemes to me, That thorough evill reft of this laft night, Or ill apayd, or much difmayd ye be, That by your change of cheare is eafie for to fee. Certes, fayd fhe, fith ye fo well have fpide The troublous paffion of my penfive mind, I will not feeke the fame from you to hide, But will my cares unfold, in hope to find Your aide, to guide me out of error blind. Say on, quoth he, the fecret of your hart, For by the holy vow, which me doth bind, I am adjur'd, beft counfell to impart To all, that fhall require my comfort in their fmart. Then gan fhe to declare the whole difcourfe Of all that vifion, which to her appear'd, As well as to her mind it had recourfe. All which when he unto the end had heard, Like to a weake faint-hearted man he fared, Through great aftonifhment of that ftraunge fight, And with long lockes upftanding, ftiffly ftared, Like one adawed with fome dreadfull fpright, So fild with heavenly fury, thus he her behight: Magnifique Virgin, that in quaint difguife Of Britifh armes doeft mafke thy royal blood, So to purfue a perilous emprize, How couldft thou weene through that difguized hood To hide thy ftate from being underftood? Can from the immortal Gods ought hidden be? They do thy linage, and thy lordly brood, They do thy fire, lamenting fore for thee, They do thy love, forlorne in womens thraldome fee. The end whereof, and all the long event, They do to thee in this fame dreame difcover. For that fame Crocodile doth reprefent The righteous knight, that is thy faithfull lover, Like to Ofyris in all juft endeavour. For that fame Crocodile Ofyris is, That under Ifes feet doth fleepe for ever. To shew that Clemence oft in things amifle Reftraine thofe fterne behefts and cruel doomes of his. That night fhall all the troublous ftormes affwage, And raging flames, that many foes fhall reare, To hinder thee from the juft heritage Of thy fires crowne, and from thy country deare. Then fhalt thou take him to thy loved fere, And joyne in equall portion of thy realme, And afterwards a fonne to him fhalt beare, That lion like fhall shew his powre extreame. So blefle thee God, and give thee joyance of thy dreame. All which when fhe unto the end had heard, She much was eafed in her troublous thought, And on thofe priefts beftowed rich reward, And royal gifts of gold and filver wrought, She for a prefent to their Goddefle brought. Then taking leave of them, fhe forward went, To feeke her love, where he was to be fought, Ne refted till fhe came without relent Unto the land of Amazons, as fhe was bent. Whereof when newes to Radigund was brought, Not with amaze, as women wonted be, She was confufed in her troublous thought, But fild with courage and with joyous glee, As glad to heare of armes, the which now She had long furceased, fhe bad to open bold, That fhe the face of her new foe might fee. But when they of that iron man had told, Which late her folk had flaine, fhe bad them forth to hold. So there without the gate, as feemed beft, She caufed her pavilion be pight, In which ftout Britomart herfelfe did reft, Whiles Talus watched at the door all night. All night likewife they of the town in fright Upon their wall good watch and ward did keepe. The morrow next, fo foone as dawning light, Bad doe away the dampe of drowfie fleepe, The warlike Amazon out of her bowre did peepe, And caufed ftreight a trumpet loud to fhrill, To warne her foe to battell foone be preft, Who long before awoke, for fhe full ill Could fleepe all night, that in unquiet breast did closely harbour such a jealous guest, was to the battell whilome ready dight. Eftsoons that warrioress with haughty crest did forth issue, all ready for the fight. On the other side her foe appeared soon in sight. But ere they reared hand, the Amazone began the ftreight conditions to propound, with which fhe ufed ftill to tie her fone, to ferve her fo, as fhe the reft had bound. Which when the other heard, fhe fternly frowned for high difdaine of fuch indignity, and would no longer treat, but bad them found, for her no other termes fhould ever tie, then what prefcribed were by lawes of chivalrie. The trumpets found, and they together run with greedy rage, and with their faulchions fmought. Ne either sought the other ftrokes to fhun, but through great fury both their skill forgot, and practique ufe in armes, ne spared not their dainty parts, which nature had created, so faire and tender, without ftaine or spot, for other ufes, then they them tranflated, which they now hacked and hewed, as if fuch ufe they hated. As when a Tyger and a Lionefle are met at fpoiling of fome hungry pray, both challenge it with equall greedinefle, but firft the Tyger clawes thereon did lay, and therefore loth to lofe her right away, doth in defence thereof full ftoutly ftond, to which the Lion ftrongly doth gaineftay, that fhe to hunt the beaft firft tooke in hond, and therefore ought it have, wherever it fhe fond. Full fiercely layd the Amazon about, and dealt her blowes unmercifully fore, which Britomart withftood with courage ftout, and them repayd againe with double more. So long they fought, that all the graflie floore was filled with blood, which from their fides did flow, and gufhed through their armes, that all in gore they trode, and on the ground their lives did ftrow, like fruitlefle feed, of which untimely death fhould grow. At laft proud Radigund with fell defpight, having by chaunce efpide advantage neare, let drive at her with all her dreadfull might, and thus upbraiding fayd: This token beare unto the man, whom thou doft love fo deare, and tell him for his fake thy life thou gaveft. Which fpitefull words fhe fore engrieved to heare, thus anfwered: Lewdly thou my love depraveft, who shortly muft repent, that now fo vainely braveft. Nathelefle that ftroke so cruell passage found, that glauncing on her shoulder plate, it bit unto the bone, and made a grisly wound, that fhe her fhield through raging fmart of it could fcarce uphold, yet foon fhe it requit, for having force increaft through furious paine. She her so rudely on the helmet fmit, that it empierced to the very braine, and her proud perfon low proftrated on the plaine. Where being layd, the wrathfull Britonefle ftayd not till fhe came to herfelfe againe, but in revenge both of her loves diftrefle, and her late vile reproch, though vaunted vaine, and alfo of her wound, which fore did paine, fhe with one ftroke both head and helmet cleft. Which dreadfull fight, when all her warlike traine there prefent faw, each one of fence bereft, fled faft into the towne, and her fole victor left. But yet fo faft they could not home retrate, but that fwift Talus did the foremoft win, and preffing through the preace unto the gate, pell mell with them at once did enter in. There then a piteous flaughter did begin, for all that ever came within his reach, he with his iron flaile did threfh so thin, that he no work at all left for the leach, like to an hideous ftorme, which nothing may impeach. And now by this the noble conquerefle her felfe came in, her glory to partake, where though revengefull vow fhe did profefle, yet when fhe faw the heapes, which he did make of flaughtred carcafes, her heart did quake for very ruth, which did it almoft rive, that fhe his fury willed him to flake. For else he fure had left not one alive, But all in his revenge of fpirit would deprive. Though when fhe had his execution ftayd, She for that yron prifon did enquire, In which her wretched love was captive layd. Which breaking open with indignant ire, She entred into all the parts entire. Where when fhe faw that lothly uncouth fight Of men difguised in womanifh attire, Her heart gan grudge for very deepe defpight Of fo unmanly mafke, in mifery misdight. At laft, when as to her owne love fhe came, Whom like difguife no leffe deformed had, At fight thereof abafht with fecret fhame, She turned her head afide, as nothing glad To have beheld a spectacle fo bad. And then too well believed that which tofore Jealous fufpect, as true untruly drad. Which vaine conceit now nourifhing no more, She fought with ruth to falve his fad misfortunes fore. Not fo great wonder and aftonifhment Did the moft chaft Penelope poffefle, To see her lord, that was reported drent, And dead long fince in dolorous diftrefle, Come home to her in piteous wretchednefle, After long travell of full 20 yeares, That fhe knew not his favours likelinefle, For many fcarres and many hoary haires, But stood long ftaring on him mongft uncertain feares. Ah, my deare lord, what fight is this, quoth fhe? What May game hath misfortune made of you? Where is that dreadfull manly looke? Where be thofe mighty palmes, the which ye wont t'embrue In bloud of kings, and great hoftes to fubdue? Could ought on earth fo wondrous change have wrought, As to have robbed you of that manly hue? Could fo great courage ftoupt have to ought? Then farewell flefhly force, I fee thy pride is naught. Thenceforth fhe ftreight into a bowre him brought, And caufd him thofe uncomely weedes undight, And in their fteed for other raiment fought, Whereof there was great ftore and armours bright, Which had been reft from many a noble knight, Whom that proud Amazon fubdued had, Whileft fortune favoured her fuccefle in fight, In which when as fhe him anew had clad, She was revived, and joyd much in his femblance glad. So there a while they afterwards remained, Him to refrefh, and her late wounds to heale. During which fpace fhe there as Princefle reigned, And changing all that forme of common weale, The liberty of women did repeale, Which they had long ufurpt, and them reftoring To mens fubjedtion, did true juftice deale, That all they, as a Goddefle her adoring, Her wifdom did admire, and hearkned to her loring. For all thofe knights, which long in captive fhade Had fhrowded been, fhe did from thraldome free, And magiftrates of all that city made, And gave to them great living and large fee, And that they fhould for ever faithfull bee, Made them fweare fealty to Artegall, Who when himfelfe now well recur'd did fee, He purpofed to proceed, what fo befall Upon his firft adventure, which him forth did call. Full fad and forrowfull was Britomart For his departure, her new caufe of griefe, Yet wifely moderated her owne fmart, Seeing his honour, which fhe tendred chiefe, Confifted much in that adventures priefe. The care whereof, and hope of his fuccefle, Gave unto her great comfort and reliefe, That womanifh complaints fhe did reprefle, And tempred for the time her prefent heavinefle. There fhe continued for a certain fpace, Till through his want her woe did more encreafe. Then hoping that the change of aire and place Would change her paine, and forrow fomewhat eafe, She parted thence, her anguifh to appeafe. Meanwhile her noble lord, Sir Artegall, Went on his way, ne ever houre did ceafe, Till he redeemed had that Lady thrall, That for another Canto will more fitly fall. End of Canto 7, Book 5. The Legend of Artegall.